welcome to Crimes Through Time, a weekly snapshot of crime history. Maria Marten loved William Cawdor, but it was a complicated affair. William wanted to keep it a secret, but when a child was born in 1827, this was impossible. The couple eloped, or at least that's what her family believed. They received letters, often from William, telling them of their new life on the Isle of Wight. But then Maria's stepmother began to have dreams that she had in fact been murdered and was buried beneath the Red Barn. When the barn was excavated, Maria's body was actually found, and she had been the victim of murder. This case fixated the public, and it had it all: a wicked squire, murdered mistress, and supernatural prophetic dreams. So let's explore the Red Barn murder. Maria Marten was born on the 24th of July 1801 in Polstead, Suffolk. Her father Thomas was a mole catcher, and she had a sister Anne. She was described as an attractive lady, and she had embarked on several relationships with men from the local area. She had already given birth to 2 children, a son with Thomas Cawdor, who passed away in infancy, and Thomas Henry, whose father Peter Matthews didn't marry Maria, but he did financially support the child. In March 1826, she began a relationship with William Cawdor, the younger brother of the father of their first son. He was 2 years younger than her, born in 1803. His nickname at school was Foxy. He was a sly and cunning child who grew into a criminal. He would commit mainly crimes of deception. He passed forward cheques totalling £93, a small fortune in the 1820s. He also aided in the theft of pigs from a neighbouring village with an accomplice, Samuel Beauty Smith, who, when questioned by the police over the theft, remarked regarding William, quote, "I'll be damned if he will not be hung one of these days." William's family, ashamed of his behaviour, sent him away to London in disgrace, but his exile would be short-lived when tragedy struck the Cawdor family. Thomas, the elder brother, drowned attempting to cross a frozen pond. In the following 18 months, William lost his father and his 2 remaining brothers. William returned to the family farm to run it with his grieving mother, beginning his relationship with Maria. William wanted their relationship to be kept secret, but Maria was very much in love, and when their child was born in 1827, she was hopeful that William would marry her. The child would pass away. How or why this happened is unclear, and there was suggestion that they had been murdered, which we will return to later. William was still prepared to go through with the wedding. The plan was to elope to Ipswich. The couple met at the Red Barn and an official proposal was made. William suggested they leave quickly. He had heard that the parish officers were discussing prosecuting Maria for having bastard or illegitimate children, which was illegal at this time. They were to leave on the Wednesday evening, but William would delay their departure with excuses until arriving at the Martins' cottage on Friday the 18th of May 1827. William told Maria, in front of her stepmother Anne Marten, remember that Anne was there, it will become important detail as the case unfolds, there was a warrant out for her arrest regarding the children. This was untrue, but it's not certain whether he was lying or mistaken. Maria thought that they should wait until cover of darkness to leave, but William was insistent. She was to dress in men's clothes to disguise herself and to pack her things and bring them with her to the Red Barn. Maria did as she was instructed, leaving quickly after William to the barn, which was located on Barnfield Hill, about half a mile walk from her cottage. She was never seen alive again. William also disappeared for a short time, returning with stories of the new life the couple had in Ipswich. He told people that she was too scared of the reactions of her family and friends to the elopement to return herself. But they knew that Maria would never purposely stay away from them and pressured William to bring Maria home or to reveal their address to them so that they could check on her safety themselves. William's response was to disappear completely. He wrote letters to Maria's father. He informed them that they had gotten married and they were now living on the Isle of Wight, despite his letters bearing a London postmark. Again, the family pushed for direct contact with Maria. All William could offer was excuses. She was unwell, she'd hurt her hand and couldn't write. The letters must have got lost in the post. Worry and suspicion about the whole situation was growing. It was at this point that Anne Marten, Maria's stepmother, began to be plagued with dreams. Maria's ghost would appear to her and point to the place her body had been buried in the Red Barn. Finally, on the 19th of April 1828, Maria's father, Thomas, relented and went to the Red Barn to dig for his daughter. Anne indicated an area in one of the Grange storage bins. In a shallow grave, buried in a sack, were the remains of Maria Marten. Over the past year, she had decomposed significantly, but was still recognisable. An inquest was convened at the Cock Inn public house in Polstead. Formal identification was carried out by her sister Anne. Her hair and some of her clothes were still present, and Maria had a missing tooth, which was also absent from the jawbone of the corpse. Mr. John Lorden, a surgeon, examined the body and declared that she had died by violent means. There were visible blood on the face and on the clothes. A wound was present on the throat from a sharp instrument, but the main injury was a wound to the orbit of the right eye, something that had been thrust into it, fracturing the small bones and penetrating the brain. She was wearing a petticoat, stays and stockings, and shoes. One curious item found with Maria was a green handkerchief tied very tightly around her neck, an item known to belong to William Cawdor. Constable Ayres obtained an old address for William from a friend. He engaged the help of Constable James Lear, an officer from Lambeth Street, London. He tracked him from place to place until he found him. He was living in Everley Grove House, Ealing Lane, in Brentford. It was a boarding house for ladies and girls that he ran with his new wife of 5 months, Mary Moore. William had met Mary by placing a Lonely Hearts advertisement in the Times newspaper. He had received over 100 replies. He also placed adverts in the Morning Herald and the Sunday Times. He received 40 and 53 replies respectively, although he never picked those up. James Lear posed as a father wishing to lodge his daughter at the boarding house. He found William dressed in a dressing gown, taking breakfast with 3 women in the parlour. He had his watch in front of him, minuting boiled eggs. When the officer identified himself and informed William he was there to discuss the death of Maria, he flat out denied he knew anyone of that name. The house was searched, and William was transported back to Polstead to appear before the inquest. A large crowd had assembled to see William return to town. He was agitated and angry when he took the stand. A verdict of wilful murder was returned, naming William Cawdor as the main suspect. In the house search, a brace of pistols, a powder flask and some balls were found in a velvet bag. Anne Marten would later identify them as Maria's and that she had them with her when she left for the Red Barn in May 1827. A sharp-pointed dagger was found, which was sharpened by a cutler named Orford a few days before the murder for William. They also discovered letters written by a Mr. Gardner, warning him that Maria had been discovered, and a passport from the French ambassador. This suggests that William was preparing to flee. The trial began on the 7th of August 1828 at Shire Hall, Bury St Edmunds. The public interest was huge. Local hotels were fully booked from the 21st of July. Queues to enter the courtroom started at 5:30 a.m, despite a ticket-only system being in place. The courthouse was surrounded with so many people that the judge and court officials would need to push their way to the door. Chief Judge, Baron of the Exchequer, William Alexander, presided. He was very displeased with the newspaper coverage, saying it was, quote, to the manifest detriment of the prisoner at the bar. Nevertheless, the Times and most other publications were sure of William's guilt and congratulated themselves that the public agreed with them. Maria's exact cause of death couldn't be determined. She could have been stabbed or shot through the eye, but strangulation couldn't be ruled out because of the tightness of the handkerchief around her neck. To avoid a mistrial, he was indicted with 9 charges, including forgery. He, quote, murdered Maria Marten by felonious and wilful shooting her with a pistol through the body, and likewise stabbing her with a dagger. William pled not guilty. The prosecution alleged William never wanted to marry Maria, but she was aware of his criminal behaviour. He had stolen money from her that the father of her child had sent for maintenance, and she was using that as leverage over William. so he lured her to the Red Barn to kill her. William then took to the stand to tell his version of events. He admitted he was in the barn. He then left and heard a pistol shot. Running back, he found Maria dead, having shot herself in the eye, the pistols lying next to her. He pleaded with the jury to believe him, despite the overwhelming evidence against him. They didn't, and it took just 35 minutes of deliberation before he was found guilty. Baron Alexander sentenced him, quote, "that you be taken back to the prison from whence you came, and that you be taken thence on Monday next to a place of execution, and that you be hanged by the neck until you are dead, and that your body shall afterwards be dissected and anatomized, and may Lord God Almighty, of his infinite goodness, have mercy on your soul." Over the next few days, William seemed to wrestle with his conscience, and after visiting with his wife and meeting with the chaplain, he did confess to the crime and how he carried it out. Quote, "I acknowledge being guilty of the death of poor Maria Marten by shooting her with a pistol. The particulars are as follows. When we left her father's house, we began quarrelling about the burial of the child. The quarrel continued for about 3/4 of an hour. Upon this and about other subjects, a scuffle ensued, and during the scuffle, and at the time I think that she had told me of mine, I took the pistol from the side pocket of my velveteen jacket and fired. She fell and died in an instant. I never saw even a struggle. I was overwhelmed with agitation and dismay. The body fell near the front doors, on the floor of the barn. A vast quantity of blood issued from the wound, and ran onto the floor and through the crevices. Having determined to bury the body in the barn about 2 hours after she was dead, I went and borrowed the spade of Mrs. Stowe. But before I went there, I dragged the body from the barn into the chef house and locked up the barn. I returned again to the barn and began to dig the hole, but the spade being a bad one and the earth being firm and hard, I was obliged to go home for a pickaxe and a better spade, with which I dug the hole, and then buried the body. I think I dragged the body by the handkerchief that was tied around her neck. It was dark when I finished covering up the body. I went from the next day and washed the blood from off the barn floor. I declared to Almighty God that I had no sharp instrument about me, and that no other wound but the one made by the pistol was inflicted by me. I have been guilty of great idleness, and at times led a desolate life, but I hope through the mercy of God to be forgiven. W. Corder. Witness to be signed by the said John Orridge, the warden. He seemed lighter after this, and attended chapel in the morning of the execution. On the 11th of August 1828, William was taken to the gallows at Bury St Edmunds. He had to be held up by a constable, his legs too weak to hold him. At one point, while the hangman was adjusting the noose, he appeared to faint. He managed to compose himself, and in a feeble voice said, quote, "I am justly sentenced, and may God forgive me," before he was turned off. It was a long process, and after 9 minutes, the executioner pulled on his legs to finish the job. 7,000 people had gathered to witness William's death. He was cut down 2 hours later. James Foxton, the hangman, took his trousers and stockings, as was tradition. His body was taken to Shire Hall, where it was slit open across the abdomen to expose the muscles. The crowd were charged £1 to view the body, and people filed past until 6 p.m. An estimate made by Norwich and Bury Post was that 5,000 people had queued to view William. The dissection was carried out the next day in front of students from Cambridge University and doctors. The skeleton was reassembled. It was not possible to study the brain, so they did a phrenology examination of William's skull. They found that the skull was profoundly developed in the areas of, quote, secretiveness and destructiveness, with little evidence of, quote, benevolence or veneration. After the trial, doubts began to be raised about the dreams that Anne Marten had described. Anne was only a year older than her stepdaughter, and there were rumours that she was also having an affair with William, and that they had conspired together to remove Maria as an obstacle to them being together. The dreams began only a few days after William married Mary Moore. They were just a way of revealing what she already knew to be true, out of jealousy that William had left her. People also began to question the fate of the couple's baby. They told people the baby lived only hours and that William had taken the body by night to Sudbury to be buried, but there are no records of a burial in the local area. Neither of them could explain the circumstances of the little one's passing or the unusual way the body was disposed of, leading many to believe that the child was murdered, and that was the real leverage Maria had over William that led to her murder, revealing where the baby's grave was located. This murder captured people's imaginations. Even while William was awaiting execution, plays, songs and writings were being made and performed, all depicting the author's version of events. Pieces of the rope used to hang William were sold for £1 each. Part of his scalp with the ear still attached was displayed in a shop window on Oxford Street. It turned Polstead into a tourist destination, with over 200,000 people visiting in 1828. The barn was ripped apart by souvenir hunters. Planks were taken from the sides and made into toothpicks and sold. What was left burnt to the ground in 1842. Even Maria's headstone in St Mary's churchyard wasn't safe, eventually being chipped away to nothing from people taking a piece. A wooden sign now marks her resting place. A replica of William's death mask, some of William's possessions, and a book containing an account of the murder, bound in tan skin from William's body, made by surgeon George Creed, are all on display at Moy's Hall Museum. Another death mask replica is in the dungeons of Norwich Castle. William's skeleton was used as a teaching aid in the West Suffolk Hospital and then displayed in the Hunterian Museum in the Royal College of Surgeons of England. In 2004, he was removed, cremated and laid to rest. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think of this case in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I look forward to welcoming you in the next one.